We got to put our back to you.
You want to say?
Yeah, that would kind of better, so.
Better, yeah. And here's your deal. I mean, I can move that table over there if y'all want to do it. Yeah, these are movable tables. Yeah, they roll. Just pop up the locks. Probably lock a little bit. They got to unlock the wheels there. There we go. There you go. All right. There you go. Okay. Obviously, a lot of people were not able to meet. Doing other things. So I know the last time we met was a few weeks ago. At which point we had provided a proposal that you were not able to accept that evening and said you were going to go back and revisit. So I believe it is in your side to present.
It is. Go ahead and. Let me just make sure I got everybody at the table and then. Sorry, this one's a little bit hot off the press. This one, yeah, I like that one. There you go.
Thank you.
Sorry, when the last time I printed it, it ended up printing off the second page. So you got it. Okay. And then I have an extra copy of you guys. I don't have enough for everybody, but if you guys wanted to sort of pass it around, look at it, you're welcome to. So thank you for your, for last week's or a couple weeks ago's counter offer. For the reasons that we discussed in the session, we were unable to accept it that day, but we prepared this counter. One of the goals for the whole process has been to, well, two mutual goals, or rather two concurrent goals on the salary part of it, is to both raise our wages to a living, a true living wage. And we did certainly make some good progress with that last year, as we've all pointed out. Last year's movement of all employees in the educational support professionals bargaining unit to $15 an hour was required by statute, but also totally unfunded. And so that had to come from other funding sources, mostly from the general fund, of course. All from it. Well, right. And there are some, I clarify that because there are some funding sources that that apply to members of the bargaining unit, and in fact, those members of the bargaining unit are in some ways revenue producing because they allow the district to comply with state and federal law, which we'll address a little bit in shortly. So we did see a significant movement on that, but while the fight for 15 has been ongoing for a number of years, and we finally did cross that threshold here in the state of Florida for our ESPs. 5 years ago, that may have very well been a living wage. Certainly it is not any longer, nor is it particularly livable here in Pinellas County. We've talked about the fact that that Pinellas has been really the center of, and the Tampa Bay area has been the center of some unprecedented and really incomparable inflation here locally, more so than almost any other place in the state or even in the country. So our original proposal had been at 7.3% minimum and raising everyone to a minimum of $20 an hour. That was valued, as we pointed out, as we talked about last month, or rather last session, that came in at approximately a $10.6 million increase over last year. Obviously, the district contends that is impossible on your end, and so we've done a little bit of movement on it. I did some research with the on what really constitutes a living wage here in Pinellas County, and I've done a pretty good tool. This is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology living wage calculator, which is pretty widely accepted. And it has a very detailed and I think a very interesting methodology. I'm happy to pass that across the table if y'all would like to take a look at it. For calculating a living wage that is specific to a particular metro area. And in our metro area, for one adult, providing for no children, just a living wage for a single adult is $18.08 per hour. We have therefore proposed an increase of for everyone making 16.76 or less to increase to $18 an hour. And that everyone else in the unit either making $16.70 or 77 cents per hour to make a 7.3% increase. If you look at the from 16.76 to $18 an hour, that increase is 7.3%. Obviously, everyone making less than 16.76 would make it would be more of an increase for them, but that does allow us to, as a whole, bring some of our lowest paid employees up to closer to a living wage. But it also addresses the second goal of this, which is the compression issue, so that our veteran employees and employees who may bring some more specific skills to their jobs also see some comparable increases. We also would like to see a continuation, and I know that we've talked about in the employee well-being and satisfaction committee meeting, the rising cost of health insurance. But we would like to see the district continue to support or to sort of shield our employees in a meaningful way from those rising costs by covering any increases to health insurance premiums. This would be the 4th year. We've been able to negotiate that successfully in the past. We thought, now I do want to address before we keep going, because I know this will be the next question, but I think it's meaningful at this point to talk about the fact that our proposal, our salary proposal, comes in at approximately 6.5 million increase. So that's about $4 million less than what we had originally proposed. It's approximately a 12% increase to the entire bargaining unit. So that is significantly less than what we had proposed on July 31st. And we also, as we all know, discussed the possibility of reopeners that could look at the some equity proposals that could speak to bringing value to the way of work and to the working conditions of our ESPs. We know obviously that we disagree on the necessity of opening those this year and really the justification for refusing to open them. But I did want to counter propose some additional points of compensation that could also make a difference in that way, sort of an intersection of value and equity proposals. So you'll see that proposal number 3 is to provide access to and charge no fees for ESP's children, grandchildren, dependents, or in the case of guardianship, legal wards in district-sponsored or contracted aftercare programs, before care, aftercare, or extended VPK programs. I know that certainly when we think of something like our club, or we think of something like the YMCA, we know that those are contracted, but the district does have the opportunity to work this into ongoing contracts with these organizations and provide that that charge-free childcare for employees of in this unit. Stands to reason out that is something I have some difficulty in evaluating because, and that does take some work on the district's side to produce those numbers. I mean, I could conduct a survey of my employees, but that of our bargaining unit employees, but that's really like a projection. But it stands to reason that as the largest employer in Pinellas County, that a significant percentage of the students in Pinellas County schools are children of our employees. And we think that this is a good way to bring not just some value and some appreciation, but some stability, housing, or rather a care stability to those families as well. we'd also like to propose, because one of the things that we had asked to talk about were the conditions or the situation facing particularly the retention of employees like our LPNs, employees like our CBAs, who have to maintain, and those are not the only ones. Certainly, there are other employees that are included in the bargaining unit that have carry additional credentialing responsibilities. So in order for them to be able to do their jobs, they have to maintain licenses, they have to pay fees to do that. There's professional development that for those employees may not necessarily be provided by the district, just because there's only so many kinds of coursework that the district can provide. So we'd like to propose that the board will pay licensing, renewal, credentialing, PD, and other fees required for the continued licensure or certification of those employees, for those that their jobs require it. So if there is some sort of additional credential that's required to do the job, for example, our LPNs, that those costs will be covered by the district. And then, of course, I like to leave us the opportunity to continue to negotiate additional compensation and contractual points as we agree.
So can I just ask you,
Sure.
$6.5 million, what was the percentage? It was 12.1.
12.1, well, 12.16.
Okay.
So just over 12%, I think, is the total increase to the bargaining unit at a cost of 6.5.
Okay.
Those are my calculate. Now I will say that Dina has been good enough to provide like updated numbers, but I hadn't had the opportunity today to plug all of that in. I don't think I'm going to see a whole lot of variation in those numbers, but it's possible that you might see a slight difference depending on what the updated numbers are today. Employee numbers.
So on the living wage calculator, do you know what components they use as to what is
Yeah, and
considered in the
mhm,
cost? I mean, do they include healthcare in that?
they do. They look at food, childcare, medical costs. They don't specifically refer. I mean, I think medical costs are for medical care and not just necessarily health insurance, though I imagine health insurance is rolled up in that. And I'm happy to provide it to you. There's a pretty good explanation of their methodology here. I'll pass it across. And I can also send it to the rest of the team.
Fine.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
Housing is calculated into that, and of course, that's what we're taking probably the biggest hit here in Pinellas. Transportation, civic costs, and so you're talking about infrastructure costs. There's an explanation of other, so it's certainly not the only one. They do talk about annual taxes. Of course, we don't have an income tax here in the state of Florida, but there are additional taxes that and increasing taxes that face our ESVs. So those are some of the costs that are included in the
Send me
living
a
wage.
link for that.
Mhm.
That'd be great.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. Within the basic needs, you look at something like childcare, healthcare.
Honestly, I'm just considering if they're considering healthcare insurance costs as part of that component.
Yeah,
That's a fairly large benefit.
That's a pretty
Like to see.
significant- yeah.
That's about $10,000-11,000 a year for an employee if they take health insurance. If they don't have-
They do consider that. They also consider medical services, prescriptions, and medical
So that would-
medical supplies.
That would be part of the required, the $18 an hour. for the living
Mhm.
wage.
Yeah, and the percent that's going to affect someone's overall compensation increase is going to vary. I think it's important to state again, and I know that we don't know, but just in case someone's watching that hasn't before, when we talk about a proposed health insurance premium increase of around 4.5%, that is not the same as a 4.5% salary increase or salary decrease. Obviously, that's going to be more or less of a percentage depending on the individual person in the plan that they've selected. That is a 4.5% increase to the premium, not necessarily to their salary. That obviously is a much lower percentage when it comes to their overall compensation. But yeah, I'll send that link to you.
Yeah, to your point, obviously, item 3, I don't even know that we have the infrastructure available for that. So I'd have to look into it. So look on the second floor and see what programs are available.
Yeah, I certainly, it's not, what I want to make sure that I'm being clear about is I'm not suggesting that the district create some sort of special
That's
childcare
what I have
program.
to find out. I don't know.
Yeah,
Right, right.
because the fortunate thing is that our district does have a very robust aftercare program. We are one of the foremost districts in providing voluntary pre-K and an extended day on that.
Right.
And I know that that's a real priority here. And again, unfunded, part of it is funded, but the district takes up a lot of that. So recognize that. But that program is not able to operate without our CBAs. So I think that this very, very clearly aligns with that, and we do have the existing care programs in place. It's a matter of what it would take capacity wise to make sure that it could facilitate the children of our employees. And when I did accomplish something similar in Hillsborough several years back. It did take some research to determine which students were, students of employees in the district, but it was data that was available. It just took some digging. We added that in, I want to say 19.
I don't think it was a full, I think it was a reduced. Yeah, and they did it there.
We negotiate, well, originally, yeah, the original proposal was full. We negotiated it to a discount.
It was a discounted rate, yeah.
But I mean, you're talking about a much, obviously a much larger district with many more sites.
But they also had a lot of their own. They actually ran their own, so they don't have like, yeah.
Yeah, they did. They did run a lot of their own sites.
Yeah.
Right.
So, some of these things are good, we've got to cost out or figure out how we're going to cost out, especially the ones numbers 3, 4, and 4.
Sure.
I will say once again, and Mr. Smith will correct me, I'm sure, on this. Just to remind for everybody again, who might not have been tuning in last time, we came with 12 to 13 million available for all groups, for increases in salaries. So, we have continued to look at our closing of our books. We have continued to look at, as was requested, to look at other ways to secure funds to go to teachers and support staff and our other groups, to raise salaries for all. And, we have continued to look at that, and we will continue to do so, to come back with, the best possible offer that we can. But again,
this won't help this year, but I did speak to our legislative delegation yesterday, a few members, and talked about the compression issue and the fact that we went to $15 an hour, what that did to the salary schedule. All of them listened and understood. I don't know whether it'll have an effect or not, but I know my colleagues across the state are talking about the same thing with the legislators, because without funding, we can't fix that compression issue. They mandated $15 an hour, which was good for employees, but it was a $6.5 million cost to us. So without the funding, we can't really correct that. Paul's point, 12 to 13 million dollars where we are right now. We're looking to see if there's more we can do, but we'll have to cost out all of this stuff and see what the impact of those are. We only have one pot of money available for everything. So if we would pick up the cost of health insurance, that's pressure on the amount we have available for raises as well.
okay.
Okay. Quick question, I'm sorry, before I don't mean to, and if you don't have the information here, it just occurred to me while we were having that talk about what's available now versus what's available in the future. When we saw the increase to the SEIU unit, to the bus driver specifically, was that general funds, or was there some sort of unique or particular funding source that was general funds? Yeah. Okay. I know that, just for reference, obviously, if anybody's at home, we did see kind of a mid-year, May, I think, pretty significant increase to recruit and retain bus drivers. But there are sometimes unique funding sources that arise that could address some of those costs. I just wanted to see if that was something that was applied there.
Does anybody have any questions?
No. I do like the creativity in numbers 3 and 4. We need to figure that out. But again, there's a finite pool of funds, and 6.5 million for the proposal is about half of what we have available for all units. So, we need to confirm that, but fairly confident in your calculations, but that's a big ask, so to speak. But 3 and 4 are things that we can take a look at. Forms of compensation for members.
To align our counters with or our proposals and counter proposals with data. And so even though they are very large numbers, they are nothing beyond what our ESPs are facing to survive here in Pinellas and continue to work in Pinellas County schools. So I acknowledge that these are big numbers. I feel for the individuals who are wrestling with, surviving and raising families and sending them to our schools on a daily basis. So I agree with you. But I want to assure everyone that these numbers are certainly not plucked out of thin air. They're, just trying to recognize the pressures that are facing our people.
Can I ask a question on number 4? What is the cost for let's just say the nurses, the LPNs, the cost for the licensing? And how often is the renewal?
LPNs are, I believe LPNs are on a 3-year basis. I know that our CDAs are on a 3-year basis. There are fees ranging anywhere from probably $150 to $250 as far as certification fees. And Nellie could speak to the costs of re-upping.
Yeah, it's around 100, for the CPS, it's around $200. You had to do the first CPR certifications. You had to do all the CIU classes and the licenses, so it's around 200 every 3 years.
So it's 300 every 2 years.
Every 3 years.
200 every 3 years.
200.
And that's for the CDAs.
Cities.
But it's certainly, there's coursework that's associated with that. It's not, continuing, CE points. And so, and everyone could be affected at different times.
Do we have any professional development for those courses? Do you know?
I have to go and look and see what those are. I know we offer CPR. I know we
So it's
offer,
every 5 years,
Pardon me?
every 5 years.
what,
Yes,
every
yes,
5
it
years.
is.
No, but of the
No, we
coursework that
offer.
you have to do for this ongoing
Oh,
certification,
it's all-
is there any that I just don't know the answer to that. Do we offer any of that professional development?
I believe
think
we
we
offer
do.
some,
So,
and
but
I-
not
Just
all.
not all.
and we're only talking 2 positions here, so
Yeah.
we would need to go through the
Yeah, we need
entire.
to go
group
through
and
all of
see
that.
what
Yeah.
is entire, because there's
Yeah, you have
pages of job
OT,
descriptions, so.
OTPT.
Yeah. And we're seeing increasing requirements from the state of Florida on not just the, if you think about an LPN, obviously that's a state licensed role, but the additional responsibilities that are required. Not just to work in our, even though there's not like a school nurse certification or license in the state of Florida, it doesn't mean that there aren't still requirements for continuing education. And particularly when we talk about the professionals that are required to have either licenses or certifications, particularly for compliance with our federal programs. And that is, I know that we talked about in the last session, how that funding hasn't necessarily changed a whole lot in the last few years. I think you said something like 50 million. Was it something like 50 million?
The SEIU, that would be.
No, I mean, like, I apologize. I have it in my notes from the last session, but you said that federal funding has been stayed relatively static within the last few
Yeah,
years.
it has, but yeah, I'm sorry, you're talking about IDEA and,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Title I, yes, it's, Title I's about $28 million.
Mhm.
IDEA is about 25, $26 million. It's been relatively static for the
Yeah.
last several years.
So
In
mid
fact, there's even
fifties.
talk about making, about IDEA going away. There's some conversation about that at the federal level.
Mm.
Yeah, which would be a big blow to us.
That would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
But I think it's especially relevant to this particular group because
Mm.
there are just like we acknowledged the increase in our ESPs for last year to go to $15 an hour, that was required by the state, but it was not funded.
Correct.
So much of, on the one hand, so many of our employees are obviously paid out of or funded out of the general fund. But they also intersect with federal funding because of the compliance issues and the requirement to have them in place in order to meet those laws. So even though the funding isn't necessarily more, it's not like clocking more, the districts are billing for more, it's still required to provide it. And these are the people who do.
Not in my notes.
There's your-
Okay. All right, so obviously we can't accept or decline or reject this offer tonight because we have to do some follow-up. So we will be working on that and then we can schedule our next meeting.
Okay.
So if we are looking, Now, this is going to, this is not, I mean, I was jotting down several questions. This is not something I can just and spit out a dollar amount. So this is gonna take us a little bit of time. I don't wanna say it's gonna take us a month to do, but I don't think we're gonna have it done by next week. I will just tell you, we will not have it done by next week. So do we want to look 2 weeks?
Yep.
I mean, I think we want the answer to these responses beforehand, and there might be some follow-up in between.
Research on number 3.
That's what I'm kind of looking at. Tell me a little bit more about what Hillsborough did.
We
Dina,
did,
for you.
It's, yeah, I was gonna say, it's a little different because here in Pinellas, we have our club, the Y. In Hillsborough, they predominantly, now they do have the Y, but they predominantly have host, which is an employee. So district, the host employees are employees of the district, and it's a district funded program. And so they do the Y at several schools and those pieces, but it's not it's a district, so
It's their
Hillsborough
program. County School Board
Yes,
employees and
yes.
program.
So employee,
implemented.
right, so teachers, support employees could work the before school program or even the after school program. Plus they also hired, part-time, like my own kid worked for Host and was a counselor or an assistant in that particular program. So it was something that they do offer there at a pretty decent deep discount for those employees because it is their program. I am not sure, and I don't have that information. I can certainly find out
Yeah.
if that same discount is offered at the Y programs and those that are not Hillsborough's
we
program.
ran into that issue in the first year because the contracts had already been
Mhm.
executed. There was some compensation for that was attached to it. I don't right now remember if they made some sort of supplement or if they somehow supplemented the programs themselves, or if it was a direct payment to the employees. I can't remember how we did it at that time, because really Host was a larger program.
Yeah.
But but that was really only an issue for the first year, because after that, the contracts could be negotiated to include it. So that was something that we ran into in the very beginning when we first made that generated that program. But then after that, it was no longer an issue. I will say I'm not totally sure, even though I should, because my own kid is a student in Host. I don't know that they still extend that discount.
I'll find out from Mr. McManus.
Yeah, and I don't, I will say also that Host, one of the primary differences that we ran into there was, on the one hand, it was revenue, it was self-funding. But with very, very little overhead. It wasn't as though we were generating a whole lot of profit or anything. It certainly wasn't. It was the budget there was very tight. So I'm not totally sure that it would have made a huge difference if you were talking about something different like the Y or R.
Yeah, so I can ask some questions.
Right.
I just don't know how to calculate those.
I wouldn't know how to
With
calculate
Y
that
and
either.
our club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd have to help with that.
But I think I think one of the ways that even though it seems the data gathering can seem very daunting, one of the ways that we worked around it in Hillsborough was the fact that in every child's emergency contact information, the parents' employer is listed. So that is something that, I think that I'm certainly not speaking for them, but I think it stands to reason that they probably have that data. It's just a matter of whether that's been
I don't know if that would be electronically stored or manually stored.
And I think they're all different. So I just don't know how they
And then
maintain
the
their
other question is
records.
if that were to be offered.
How many
the
would
folks
take
that
part in
are
that?
Currently in it, how many
Yeah.
additional kids would
right.
come into it.
Well, not to make a counter proposal and then say, oh, we could do this. But another way of looking at it, even if it wasn't necessarily a discount built into it, if that proved to be difficult to do because of the extent to which these services are contracted here in Pinellas, it's possible to also, and I know from, like you said, the creativity part, like we've done on the instructional side, is to look at some sort of supplement that is for this purpose, but isn't necessarily just administered by the district. So it's possible to look at some of the pressures that are affecting are disproportionately affecting our ESPs, like some sort of childcare supplement or like some sort of housing supplement that could be framed. And like when we talk about creativity, this is something that we would have to work together to get to, but some sort of supplement that could take the place of some of this value, but would be for the purpose of addressing these issues without necessarily being administered by the district or by our club or YMCA or whatever it was. So it's something that we could take a look at if you want, if this framework didn't work for the way that it's set up here in Pinellas.
So I think just with that being said, I think my head is going to, and it's a cost, right?
Yeah, of
So it
course.
doesn't matter, it regardless of what, in, purpose or whatever, but I hear what you're saying, but it is a cost, and that's our job is to figure out, okay, what's that cost? And then is it the ability to do it or not? And that's what we have, and then we have to understand that it's a recurring expense
Yes.
too. Whatever we put in place, we certainly don't want to say, okay, well, now we're not going to, whatever is in place. So again, we are looking for what we're being fiscally responsible. We had a whole discussion this morning about being fiscally responsible and how we're doing that moving forward and so forth. So I hear, I absolutely agree with
And I
that. So,
understand it is a cost for the district and then because it's a bigger number, but it's a cost too for the employee, for the support staff, the specific on job descriptions that they had to pay.
I fully understand that. Yeah, and then we just have to, that I definitely can, we'd have to go one by one and look through, because again, I know we talked two, but I would venture to say there's some other job titles out there that have the same. And we just have to cost that out, and we just have to understand that we talked about one pot. We have one pot of money. But to the extent that we can look at different things to do and how we can get that. We can do.
And I think it could, and actually, Paula, when you said that, it reminded me of a situation, we've addressed it within the last year, and it's one of the reasons that we propose it as a reopener with like our MBAs, for example. Because there is this sort of varying responsibility, depending on the circumstances, for them to ride the bus with their students. And because we're facing these transportation shortages and issues, that can drag out a great deal. And so on the one hand, we've acknowledged here at the table how that prevents some of our lowest paid employees from holding second and third jobs, which is what many of them need to do to be able to survive. We've also talked about the fact that it has an impact on childcare. In fact, I think we had that conversation with the superintendent as well.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I think we did. Where if you have someone who's an MBA on the bus.
So we
and-
understand, we
Yeah, they
understood
plan
that.
it
We talked, and we
Yeah.
absolutely agree with the situations that occur there.
Yeah.
I
One of the
am
issues- one of the
going to
biggest
say,
impacts was
no,
that
I understand that, and it's
They
so.
individually had to pay those additional fees if they
Correct.
couldn't pick their
No,
kids up.
we talked about that several times, and I know if you haven't been here, you didn't hear that before, but we've talked about that. And, we have a responsibility to provide the coverage and the assistance to our students who need that. So it is that, here's what we need, here's what our employee needs, and we need to come to some, understanding, but that is part of the job description. There are many other jobs that don't require the riding of the bus and so forth. So again, we have to make sure that we are providing employees to serve the needs of our students. And one of those needs is on our buses, and it's a requirement. So I hear what I fully understand, agree. And so we're constantly thinking about that and thinking about how we can move forward with that.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of figuring out and giving us some estimates, and it could be some estimates, but it's a good thing.
Talking to for 3 and 4, there's a lot of people we have to talk to and
Yeah,
figure that out, if that's a possibility and how we could be creative to provide a benefit.
so if we're looking at the week of the 18th.
Yes. Okay. Oh, that's right. I remember there was a date on the 18th that was available, so we might want to go ahead. Was it the 18th that y'all were available? I can't remember.
I don't remember what that list I sent you.
Okay.
I think,
The 18th we could do with Nellie. Yes.
okay,
Monday, the 18th, if that works.
I didn't keep that list.
I have, the 18th, yes.
I just booked these two and then I deleted the email.
I'm pretty sure it was the 18th because I remember it being 5 days after the 13th. I know that sounds silly, but that's what I remember. I don't know why it's on
The Monday,
You good on Monday, the 18th,
what time we doing?
4?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, it was September the
Mhm.
18th.
So you
Okay,
send them
we
back.
can do that.
Okay, thank you so
I will
much.
do the invite. Yes.
And that Monday, on a Monday, we should be fine to meet over at the building.
Okay,
It just happened to be today that we,
no problem.
do it. Thank you for making it possible.
Yeah, thank you. It was just the thing around.
Okay, I will get that meeting invite sent out. And for the 18th.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll talk about that.